What's up, everybody? My name is Brad and welcome back to the channel. I always say welcome back, even though this might be your first time visiting the channel. So if it is your first time, welcome to the channel, and if you're returning, welcome back to the channel. And today's video is going to be a bit different, although not really that different, because I'm still talking about books, and specifically, I'm still talking about horror books. But today's video was, the idea was inspired by Criminale. Ollie did a video the other day. I think his video was called 30 Horror Books You Have to Read Before You Die, where he was talking about books that he read in his formative years, like in the 80s, 90s, and so he grew up on and was recommending them to the viewers. For me, I haven't really been reading all that long, so for me, I'm going to do a different twist on it. I'm going to talk about 15 horror books that I want to read before I die. I have not been reading that long, like I said, only for the last 6 years or so that I've been seriously reading, and from middle school up until then, my reading experience was basically like a barren wasteland, a barren landscape where I was reading basically absolutely nothing. I would read a Star Wars book every now and then, but other than that, from middle school up until the last 5 or 6 years or so, I was reading absolutely nothing. So I feel like I missed out on a whole lot of books that I could have been reading within that time frame. So I don't have a ton of books to recommend other than a lot of new indie and small press stuff. So a lot of the older classics, I guess you could call them, in horror, I missed out on. And these are sort of my bucket list of books, at least part of it. This list could have been a whole lot longer. I narrowed it down to 15. Maybe if you all enjoyed this video and it does well, maybe I'll do a part 2 to it. But this is sort of my bucket list of 15 horror books that I really want to read before I bite the dust, before I croak and pass on and die. That's a very morbid thing to talk about, your own demise, but we're all getting older. We're all going to die someday. Life is short. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into it. This is my top 15 horror books that I want to read before I die. All right, so let's go ahead and get the king out of the way. Stephen King. If you were to put a gun to my head, since we're talking about death, if you were to put a gun to my head and ask me who my favorite author was, it would probably be Stephen King. I've read the most books by him. I've read 20 or so of his books, so probably about a quarter of all of his work. Still a very long way to go, and I've enjoyed almost every book I've read by him to varying degrees. There's only one I can think of that I just did not care for at all, and we won't even mention that one. But I want to read all of Stephen King's books, all the ones I have not read. But if I had to pick one specific one, that one would be The Stand. This big, thick book. I actually started The Stand, I think, end of year last year, and I was listening to it on audiobook. I checked it out from my library, and the audiobook expired, and I just never went back to it. I did mark my place in here. I got about 430 pages into it, and I was really enjoying the post-apocalyptic story. The last thing I remember was the characters were going through this tunnel, and previously the military had set up like a machine gun nest and was just basically mowing down anybody who was trying to flee the city through the tunnel. That's sort of the last big scene I remember from the book. Still had a long way to go. Still only about a quarter or a third or so of the way through it. But this is one I definitely want to finish. I'll probably start over from the beginning when I get around to rereading it. But yeah. First up on the list is The Stand by Stephen King. Next up, this one is very similar to The Stand, and that is Swan Song by Robert McCammon. This is his big, epic post-apocalyptic book. Very similar, I believe, in ways to The Stand, and a lot of people say this is even better than The Stand. Other than that, I don't really know much about what this one entails, if this one is a virus like Captain Trips is in The Stand, or if it's a completely different post-apocalyptic scenario. I have not read very much Robert McCammon. I've read The Listener, and last year I read A Boy's Life, both of which were amazing reads, 5-star reads. So I'm really hungry to read more Robert McCammon, and I think this one and Boy's Life were sort of touted as his best books. So another one on my list that I want to read, another big thick book. This one is paperback. It's almost 1,000 pages, 930 some odd pages. So another big chunker of a book, but I want to read Swan Song by Robert McCammon. Next up is The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. I've yet to read anything by Jack Ketchum, and The Girl Next Door is sort of touted as The big extreme book, the most extreme book, most graphic, violent, sexually explicit book that you will read. And I feel like, even though I do want to read it, I feel like since it's been built up so much and it's been talked about so much, it sort of has its own sort of, folklore kind of esque behind it. I feel like it's not going to live up to the expectations. Not that it won't be good, not that it won't be graphic and violent or whatnot, but it's been built up so much and I've thought about it so much in my head. I don't think it's going to live up to those sort of lofty expectations that I've put on it based on what everyone else has said about the book. And one thing is funny, there's one cover of the book that sort of has like a skeleton in a cheerleading outfit, which just does not do the book justice at all. It's nothing to do with what is actually going on inside the book. It's just a very odd choice of a cover for that book. But Jack Ketchum, he's an author I want to read, but specifically I want to be reading The Girl Next Door. Next up is, and most of these authors on this list are authors I have not read anything from. Aside from Stephen King, I think he's the only one I've read anything by on this list. Next up is Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. I love vampires. I'm excited for this one, but I'm also sort of trepidatious about this one because I think this one leans more into the romance side of vampires, which I'm not the biggest fan of the romance aspects. I like the more sort of monstrous, bestial aspects of vampires. I have seen the movie. It's been a very long time. I don't really remember too much about it. But this one, it's iconic. It's probably her most famous book. Either this one or the witch book. I can't think of The Witching Hour, maybe is what it's called. But up on the list, Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. Next up, and this one I'll actually be reading pretty soon to self-plug. This is going to be the May Spine Breakers Book Club selection. And if you'd like to join in and read along with us, the link to my Discord will be down in the description. We'll be reading this one next month in May. And this one is I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. Again, I've seen the movie. A lot of these that have movie adaptations, I have seen the movies for them. I've seen the Will Smith movie. I have not seen the older one that came out in the 70s. I think it went by a different title. The one in the Will Smith movie, it did not seem like they were vampires. Like this one's about vampires. That movie seemed like they were mutant, zombie kind of creatures. Really nothing reminiscent about vampires whatsoever. Nothing in that movie gave me the slightest inkling that it was supposed to be about vampires. But the novel is about vampires, which is awesome. And like I just said a second ago, I love vampires, so I'm really excited to finally read I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. Again, book club pick for next month in May. If you want to read along with us, the link to my Discord is down in the description. Next up is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. I'm a bit intimidated by this book. This is another book that people say it's like the scariest book they've ever read, or it is, they just absolutely hate it and can't stand it. And recently on Twitter, author Rain King, he was reading House of Leaves, and he would do like a daily update, sort of his thoughts and what was going on every day while he was reading it. And then Steve talks about books and things. He recently did a video within the last month or so, I want to say, talking about House of Leaves. But I've always been intrigued. I've always been curious about it. Is it just a gimmick, the way it's all laid out and everything like that? Or is it truly a very scary book? I don't know. It doesn't seem scary, because I know the book is about a house that's bigger on the inside than the outside. And that just sounds weird and strange, but it doesn't necessarily sound scary. So I'm very interested in reading this book. And this is going to sound really weird, but one of the reasons I'm sort of nervous about it is I get motion sick very easily. And I'm afraid the book will make me motion sick, which sounds really stupid saying that out loud. But I've seen the interior of the book, and the text is formatted all weird on certain pages. I'm pretty sure some of the text on some of the pages spirals around, so you have to turn the book to read it. And I just feel like that's going to make me dizzy and make me feel motion sick, which sounds really absurd, but I get motion sick super, super easy. So I don't want to get motion sick while reading a book. That would just suck. But that's beside the point. But House of Leaves by, Mark Z. Danielewski is definitely high up on my list of books I want to check out. Next up is Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin. Again, this is another one. I've seen the movie ages and ages ago. I think this one's popular enough where everyone probably knows what this one's about. Her baby, the daddy, is the devil, I'm pretty sure is what it was. So Demonic Baby sounds cool. I really do remember liking the movie, even though I don't remember too much about it. So I really want to dive into the source material and see if it stacks up, holds up to how cool the movie was that I remember back in the day. Next up, another one I've seen the movie from is American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. And I've heard that Patrick Bateman in the movie that Christian Bale played is quite drastically different than how he's portrayed in the book. In the book, he's sort of nerdy and whatnot, and he was definitely not portrayed as being nerdy in the movie. He was more of a sort of a jock kind of character. So it'd be fun to read the book and then watch the movie and compare and contrast the two, the differences between how Patrick Bateman was portrayed from the source material to the movie. And I've heard good things about American Psycho. I've heard it's a bit dry though, I don't know, but it's one I definitely want to check out. American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. Another one is Beloved by Toni Morrison. This one might come up on the Spinebreakers Book Club selection sometime soon. It was on the list to get voted on recently. It didn't win, but maybe we'll come back to it. This one sounds cool. This one takes place sometime after the Civil War, I believe. So it's dealing with post-slavery, but I think it's about either a former slave, I think, and sort of the hauntings and all the horrible stuff that she's dealing with due to what happened during slavery. And I love books set during that time period in American history. I just find that time period fascinating. Anything about history, I really am a big history buff. So if it's sort of a historical fiction-esque type horror book, it's definitely one I want to read. And that one is Below by Toni Morrison. Next up is The Ruins by Scott Smith. Another one, again, I've seen the movie. I'm being a broken record here, seeing all these movies but not reading the books. I don't remember much about this movie other than they're in the jungle and it's about killer plants. And I love horror set in a jungle setting. I don't know what it is about it, just that it's sort of exotic. You don't really see too much jungle horror, but I love that setting. And this one sounds awesome. You know, killer plants out in the jungle, killing this group of travelers, adventurers, and just completely massacring them. I think the movie had cannibals in it as well. I don't remember. But The Ruins by Scott Smith. And I think this is only his second book. I think he wrote A Simple Plan in The Ruins, and then he kind of disappeared and didn't write anything else, which is kind of interesting. But The Ruins by Scott Smith. And this next book is sort of the polar opposite of The Ruins. Instead of being in the jungle, this one's out in the freezing cold, the Arctic blizzard snow. And that is The Terror by Dan Simmons. I have not seen the TV show. I specifically held off on watching the show because I wanted to read the book first. I think this is a big chunker of a book, probably 800 something pages. Most of Dan Simmons' books are pretty big, but this is one I have, again, sort of historical fiction-esque kind of horror that I really, really want to sink my teeth into and read. So hopefully I'll get to that one sooner rather than later. Next up is Harvest Home by Thomas Tyrion. I think I'm saying his last name right. This one is like folk horror. It sort of gives me vibes of The Wicker Man, Midnight Summer. Is that right? Midnight Summer? Can't remember. I haven't seen that movie, but I think this one was, I think Stephen King has a quote saying that his Children of the Corn was sort of inspired by this book. The family sort of flees the bigger city, goes out into like the countryside, this small little hamlet, and there's this sort of festival that's going to happen, I believe, and then bad things happen. I love the old school, the original cover for this book. The hardcover. I don't think it's out in paperback. I don't know if you can get it in that or not. I'm probably gonna have to get it on Kindle or audiobook, but I want to read Harvest Home by Thomas Tyrion. Next up is The Amityville Horror by Jay Anson, I believe. I think this one is more sort of goes the non-fiction-esque route since it's based off of a true story. I've seen the Ryan Reynolds movie. I've seen the original movie, but I don't remember much about that one. The Ryan Reynolds one was not very good. But I know Well Red Beard, Kevin, he loves this series of books. And I really didn't know it was a series of books. I just thought it was one and done. The Amityville Horror by Jay Anson is one I want to check out. The Woman in Black by Susan Hill, another sort of haunting ghost story. Either the guy is from London or he's gone to London and he is being haunted, sort of pursued by this woman in black. And I don't know if this is the source material that the Daniel Radcliffe movie is based off of or not, because I think it's the same title, The Woman in Black. This one sounds interesting. I don't know if she's just sort of a ghost or if it's going like the witch route or not. I'm not sure if she's a witch or not. But The Woman in Black by Susan Hill is one I want to check out. And the final book of my list for today of the top 15 books I want to read before I bite the dust and die is Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach. And this one sounds really, I've heard this one is one of the scariest books of all time for whatever reason. I'll have to read it and find out. But I think this one, this guy has sort of revisiting these bad memories from childhood, and each chapter is like a different piece to the puzzle that you and the narrator are sort of putting together to figure out whatever it is that's going on. And I might be wrong, but I feel like pieces of this were originally posted online somewhere, like a forum or maybe Reddit or something. I don't even know if Reddit was around back when this was written. And it was all these, I guess like each chapter was just posted separately online somewhere, I think. And then it was finally all combined into a book together. I might be completely wrong on that, so don't take my word for it. But I think that's what I've heard about this book. But the last book on the list is Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach. And that's it. That's been my top 15 books that I want to read, my bucket list books of horror that I want to read before I croak and bite the dust and die. That's a very morbid thing to keep talking about for a video. But if you have read any of these books, let me know what you thought about them down in the comments. Or if you have a bucket list of books that you want to read before you die, let me know down in the comments as well. Well, that's all I have for you guys today. So hope you have a great rest of your Friday, a great weekend. Again, my name is Brad. Thank you for spending your time with me, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.